Today, we are going to be talking about all things Aaron Rodgers as we head towards the 2025-2026 season. Where do I see Rodgers playing next year, if at all, and what each potential destination would mean for him? If you're new to the channel and you love the NFL, hit that subscribe button. Let's hop into today's video. All right, so for starters, the New York Jets have made it known that Aaron Rodgers will not be back next year. And while I don't think Rodgers is completely washed, and I still think he's a top 20 guy in the league, I do think this is the correct decision for the New York Jets and their franchise. You bring in a new GM, you bring in a new head coach, you're trying to switch up the culture. And as much as I think Aaron Rodgers is still a good player, he is the culture of the old administration. He was clearly a guy that was making decisions within that organization. And if you are trying to recreate a losing brand like the New York Jets, it is best to wash down everything, keep the young talent, and start over. And I think that that could be a successful venture for Aaron Glenn. As well, Aaron Rodgers doesn't exactly fit the New York Jets timeline of success. Are they going to be winning while Aaron is still in the league for the next year or two? My guess is probably not. So where could we see Aaron going next year? Well, when it comes to DraftKings odds, they have them as followed. Pittsburgh plus 200, the Raiders plus 300, the Niners plus 350, the Vikings plus 400, Colts plus 650, Rams plus 850, Titans plus 850, Giants plus 1200, Browns plus 1400. Let's just, start right away. The Cleveland Browns, this isn't happening. Aaron Rodgers wouldn't want to go to Cleveland, and I don't think the Browns really have an interest in Aaron Rodgers fitting their timeline. The same thing timeline-wise goes for the New York Giants. While Aaron has shown an ability to enjoy the city of New York, the Mecca, the Big Apple, being in the limelight in New York, I just don't see him fitting the Giants timeline. Maybe if the Giants were really to make some let's win now moves and use Aaron as a bridge quarterback, I could at least buy into it a little bit more than the Browns, but I still don't think it's likely. As we talk about the Tennessee Titans as a possibility, I do think there is some percent chance here that this could happen, right? The Titans could easily fall in love with Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter in a weaker quarterback draft class. All signs point to them wanting Cam Ward, which is why I wouldn't bet that this happened. But if they were to fall in love with one of those two prospects, Aaron Rodgers could be a good bridge quarterback as well. He could just kind of be a quarterback for them to compete for the AFC South next year. It is a pretty open division with only Houston being a competent franchise, at least from what we saw last year. Rodgers would immediately come in and be the second best quarterback based on last season in this division. You have weapons like Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, Chigung Konkwu, a defense with guys like Tavondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons, L'Jarius Sneed that are ready to play. The defense was actually pretty criminally underrated last year, so I wouldn't hate this move. But again, I do think the Titans are headed towards let's draft our guy in Cam Ward and develop him. The Rams, this is an interesting one because it's possible that the Rams are really wanting out of the Matthew Stafford business. There's been a lot of smoke in the Rams trading Stafford over the past couple weeks, which has led me to believe either one, the Rams actually are interested in moving off of Stafford and moving off of that money, or two, this is just a negotiating ploy from either Stafford's camp or the Rams camp to say, hey, we'll get rid of you, or hey, I could leave. Let's work something out here. My ultimate guess is that Stafford stays with the Rams, but hey, if the Rams decided to move on and they wanted to bring in Rodgers for 1 year to compete and then draft in next year's quarterback class that's a little bit better than this year's, I wouldn't be mad at it. But in my opinion, Rodgers is going to end up on one of these top 5 teams. And I also just kind of want to throw away the 49ers at this point in time. They're plus 350, so maybe DK Sportsbook knows something that I don't, but I just don't see the team moving off of Brock Purdy's cheap contract for a contract in Rodgers that would inevitably be more expensive next year. Brock Purdy is eligible for an extension, but doesn't need one going into next year. Ultimately, Purdy is playing at a higher level than Rodgers right now and would be cheaper next year. Even if it's just a 1-year window thing, I don't see where this makes sense for San Francisco. This would have to be Brock Purdy requesting out in some version of a sign and trade with the Jets potentially, but a lot of messiness there that I just don't see happening. I don't know why the Niners are this high, to be quite frank. Now, these top 4 teams all have really strong cases. The Colts, the lowest at plus 650. Hey, they said that they want somebody competing with Anthony Richardson. Aaron Rodgers would compete with Anthony Richardson. And similar to what I said about the Tennessee Titans getting Rodgers, if he walked in this division, he would immediately be the second best quarterback. The Colts finished second in the division last year, and Anthony Richardson was pretty bad. Aaron Rodgers could come in and run a much better offense consistently than Anthony Richardson. There are still some question marks on this Colts roster as a whole when it comes to weapons. How strong are they? Was Michael Pittman worth the money? That offensive line isn't the best, isn't the worst. The defense, they just fired their defensive coordinator, so what will that be going into next year? There's a lot of question marks in Indy that lead me to believe, hey, Aaron Rodgers, probably not the guy that fits their timeline, but his relationship with Pat McAfee is very strong. Pat McAfee, of course, a Colts guy. Could there be some underlying works there in terms of, this is my guy, you need a bridge quarterback, you need some competition, let's make it happen? Maybe. Then we get to the top 3 teams, and these are really, really strong contenders in my opinion, and I'm going to talk about them in the order that I would like to see it happen. Least of all, I would like to see the Vegas Raiders happen, right? Ultimately, they just wouldn't compete next year. I still even think with Rodgers, they are the 4th place team in that AFC West division, with Mahomes and the Chiefs still being strong, Herbert, Harbaugh, and the Chargers only getting better, and the same could be said for Nick's, Peyton, and those Denver Broncos. This would strictly be a bridge quarterback signing. This is just a, hey, we are bringing in Pete Carroll to instill a culture. We're ripping the floorboards, bulldozing the house, building a new foundation, not ready for a long-term quarterback solution, but still want to bring in a high-level guy that could help develop our weapons, like a Brock Bowers, or if they were to draft a receiver in this draft, somebody that could consistently get them the ball and help them develop. Ultimately, that is what Rodgers would do. The swan song of his career would be, hey, I get to live in Vegas, I get to play for the Raiders, be the face of a pretty well-known franchise, Pete Carroll, Tom Brady, the limelight, it will be on me, and I get to help develop these younger guys and maybe, upset the Chiefs or upset the Chargers throughout the season, but there is no Super Bowl aspirations with this Raiders team if Rodgers were to be their QB. Then we have the team with the highest odds to get Rodgers, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. And honestly, this one does make a lot of sense, and it is probably my safest prediction as to where I think Rodgers will be next year. We know Tomlin has some favoritism towards veteran players and veteran quarterbacks. He wants a guy that can come in there, run his offensive system, be a high IQ player, and let the defense win football games. Aaron Rodgers would be an upgrade from what Pittsburgh has had at quarterback the past couple years, while they've been making the playoffs pretty consistently, being a double-digit win team. Whether it's Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, Mason Rudolph, whoever it is, Tomlin has found a way to win with them. And while I don't think Rodgers is anywhere close to peak Aaron Rodgers, this would be the best quarterback Pittsburgh has had since Ben Roethlisberger. And this would be a good spot for Rodgers to end his career on a winning note. The Jets' years are going to leave a sour taste in people's minds and going to affect his quarterback rankings all time. But if he were to finish out with a couple playoff years in Pittsburgh, that could really change some things the way it did Brett Favre going to Minnesota. Rodgers and Tomlin, they seem to have a pretty good relationship as is. You have weapons there, Jalen Warren, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth. You could bring in a Devontae Adams. We know Pittsburgh was interested in him and Ayuk this past offseason. There's a lot of things here that make sense and connect dots for Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers. And lastly, the spot that I'm most interested in as an NFL fan would be the Minnesota Vikings. For starters, you can't deny how cool it is that he would quite literally follow the Brett Favre trajectory. Packers, Jets, Vikings. As well, Aaron would compete for a Super Bowl with this Vikings roster. We just saw Sam Darnold for 17 weeks have this Vikings team as a Super Bowl contender. The problem was when the lights got the brightest, he crumbled like a cookie. And it's not to say that Aaron is some amazing, heroic playoff big game performer, but he's not that bad. Aaron Rodgers in those games would have put up a better fight than Sam Darnold. And JJ McCarthy coming off the ACL injury, is this a guy that the Vikings want to roll out there as early as next year? Or with his young age, do they want to let him sit one more year behind a top 10 all-time quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, learn from him, give Rodgers a one-year deal, let him go out as a winner, and compete for a Super Bowl? Because let's be honest, the Vikings were in the mix throughout this year. Top-tier defense headed by Brian Flores. Tons of weapons that Rodgers would absolutely love with Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. Can you convince Devontae Adams to come on the cheap and create a freaking super team? I don't know. They do have a good offensive line, a great head coach in Kevin O'Connell, who is pass happy, who will get Rodgers' numbers up, who will put them in a spot to succeed. I don't know if it happens, because if you're Minnesota, you may be better off just going with JJ McCarthy and letting him start to develop. But as an NFL fan, if we could see Rodgers in that purple and gold or purple and yellow, whatever you call it, Vikings fans, and they would be competitive, that would be something. As well as getting to see Rodgers play the Packers twice a year and Aaron Rodgers return to Lambeau while he's wearing the Vikings uniform, it would be chef's kiss NFL storytelling. But like I said, I think Pittsburgh's the likely outcome here. I don't see Rodgers retiring. I think he gives it one more season, wants to go out at least as a competent winner. He looked pretty good towards the end of last season. So I think he stays, and I think he goes to Pittsburgh. I would love to see him in Minnesota. I think that'd be the most fun as an NFL fan, but my prediction is Pittsburgh. Let me know what you want to see and what you think is going to happen in the comment section down below. If you made it this far in the video, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you love the NFL. Catch you next time. Peace.